So, a big warm welcome this week to Tracy-Anne Ormrod. And Tracy, you may already know, but she is the co-founder of Lion Dog Apps, who are the developers of the Dressage TestPro app. It's a dressage learning app, and she's been riding and competing since the age of 10, representing Great Britain at 4 European Championships as a pony rider. Tracy was elected the BD, that's British Dressage Para Director, 4 years ago, and starts her second term this month. She's also Chief Selector for the Great Britain Paras. So, big warm welcome, Tracy.
Hello, thank you very much for having me on here. This is great to see you and speak to you, obviously.
So I'm going to get really nosy and ask you a couple of questions about you and find out more about you and what makes you tick. So tell us about your dressage journey. Was it always dressage, dressage, dressage for you, or were you a jumper at some point
No,
as well?
it wasn't always dressage. It was one of those sort of, I don't know, turns happy endings or happy starts, in that I started riding when I was about 9 and I got my first pony when I was 10 because my dad got a bonus at work. Um, and that was very lucky for me, really. And he was great. And then I sort of did really well with him. He was a little trotting pony. He was used in a carriage rather than a riding pony, so I had to do quite a lot of work with him. And then my second pony, who was called Here Comes Charlie, he developed anemia. Up until that point, I'd been very much pony club, but doing jumping primarily. So I'd done junior fox hunter with Charlie, and that was my thing. But then he got anemia, and they couldn't quite work out why, but he had to rest. And then when he was brought back into work, he had to do lots of flat work first of all, and I had to build him up quite slowly and carefully. And that's what sort of started the dressage journey. At the same time, what happened was I then went to a show, just a regular, one of your little local shows where you can do absolutely everything,
Yeah.
working on a pony. And I was in the best rider class for like 12 and unders, which I won. And the person that was judging happened to be a lady called Leonie Marshall. And at that time, she was a dressage trainer. Well, remained so pretty much until her death. And she'd been shortlisted for the Olympic team. And she met my parents afterwards and said, I don't teach children, but I will teach yours.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and so that's how our partnership started. And apparently, I mean, I don't remember, I do remember occasionally driving at a distraction. But she, yeah, she used to occasionally say to me, "You're making me tear my hair out." Not because I wasn't doing something or whatever. It was because I don't know whether I was trying too hard or wanting to have it all perfect or something. But and that was my nature even then, so yeah, I mean that's how my dressage journey started. And that pony, Here Comes Charlie, which he was only 13 too, he became my dressage pony. And then Leonie was the person that said to me, "You should try for the British team." And my parents were not horsey at all. So they sort of turned round and looked at her a bit sort of like, "Really? You sure about this?" And she'd said this at sort of like the week going into winter. And at that time you had a selection trial, normally around March, April time at Stoneleigh, for those that remember Stoneleigh before they sort of were trying to put HS2 through it. In Stoneleigh, in the big indoor school there, and yeah, and so that's what happened. It was like one of those whirlwinds, really. I got caught up in, and I just
Yeah.
happened to have this very clever pony. He was a jumping pony, but he took to the dressage so well. He had the most appalling walk. I mean, we used to say the judges used to have to have a cup of tea when we did the extended walk. It took so long. Um, I mean, but he was really clever with things like going sideways. He picked it up really quickly. And Leonie was an absolute stickler for riding the test accurately. So I could never get away with anything. And then, yeah, 6 months of hard work through the winter, went to the selection trial, got in the top 12, which were then invited to the second selection trial. Um, and It was all on grass at this, which obviously we were all used to. Although I was lucky enough, the riding school I ended up working at the weekends at. It had an indoor, so I was lucky to be able to ride during the winter and stuff. But yeah, so then got invited to the second selection trial. I mean, we were all the typical newbies. We had no idea really what we were doing,
Yeah.
and Leonie sort of guided us. Pony Europeans had been going about, I want to say, about 3 or 4 years at this point in time. Um, And that particular year, Lincoln, the Lincoln Showground, which some people may have visited, especially if you do riding club and they hold the championships there, it was at Lincoln Showground. So it was on dead flat, beautiful grass it was going on. And they held the dressage ponies and the show jumping pony Europeans. And we got to the second selection trial and I came fifth. So I'd moved up from like
Yeah.
10th or 11th or whatever I'd come, and I came fifth. So they said, oh, well, because it's being held in the UK, you will go as reserve. And because we're the host nation, that means you can go and you can ride as an individual. So it was amazing for me.
Yeah.
So we all rocked up there with our tents because my parents borrowed a tent from somebody, and it was, and we had the trailer, and it was all very low key, and ponies were stabled in lovely stables, and it was all very great, and you have a trot up and whatnot. And oh, he had his passport, he had to have a new passport. And then the chef de keep came round, a lady called Jill Drew, and she said, um, "You're in the team." And I turned around to her, and I can remember my words, and I said, "Yes, I know. I'm representing GB. I'm very excited." And she said, "No, no, dear, you're in the team. Um, Nicola has had to pull out her pony's lame." And I sort of went, you know,
Yeah.
and I was 12 at this point in time. So hence it was a super whirlwind scenario, in that I'd only got this pony when I was 11. We'd been together, only sort of a year to 18 months. So yes, I was the rookie and the little one, I was the youngest. The other girls were older than me and much more experienced. Yeah, so that started my dressage journey. However, that particular pony, I still used to hunt him, but we just never told my dressage trainer. I used to go off hunting because he loved hunting. And I also did a 1 day event with him. This was a couple of years later. I did a 1 day event with him and won that. But we never used to tell her. She used to say to me, "Do not tell me if you're going to go and jump him. I don't want to know." Um, so, I mean, I had I would say a proper childhood. I was lucky enough to have a proper childhood pony club sort of environment to sort of end up in because my parents knew nothing. So I had to go down the pony club route anyway
Yeah.
to learn all the stable management stuff.
Yeah.
To help out, and look after him. And my mum was a dab hand at plaiting, though, so she learnt to plait, and she was really good at that side of things. But everything else I learnt via the pony club. So I'm a great advocate for the pony club in that way. That I always say, yep, you should always go in the pony club, and if at all possible, do your stable management exams, do your D and your C test. And I did B and H test. I never did an A because by that time I was working and doing other stuff. But yeah, so that's how my dressage journey. And I haven't changed since. I still jump. I still, if given half a chance, I'd go hunting. And obviously it's drag hunting, but or exercising hounds. Just love that being out and hacking you know,
Yeah.
um, still go to the forest here and to the beach. So there's still that little pony club girl inside me.
The rebel.
Right. Absolutely.
Did you ever think of becoming a professional rider at any point?
Yeah, I think every child thinks they're going to be a professional rider, and I did. I was one of those. I was a bit of a rebel in a quiet way. Um, I did O levels. I then flunked out of school, didn't like school, did pay my way with my horses. So I used to take in, ponies because I'm only, for those of you that don't know me, I'm just about 5'3". And so I could fit on a pony.
Yeah.
Still, even now I ride ponies. So I used to take in ponies for backing, between the ages of sort of 16 to 18, 19. Used to teach, everything to make the horses pay their way. And, my parents didn't have loads of money or anything. My dad was made redundant like God knows how many times during that sort of era. So yeah, they had to make their own way. And then the technology, the career started in a really weird way, actually, because bear in mind, zero qualifications. Um, I had met James, who's now obviously husband, co-founder, general dog's body for horses. I had met James by this time. I'd started a career in law, funnily enough, because it
Oh,
was of interest to me. And I was in the magistrates' courts in London, working in the back office and also in the courts themselves, with the court clerks. And I transferred out to Oxford and they had a really rubbish computer system. It drove me nuts, absolutely nuts. And it was all the big stuff, the mainframes and the minis, and it was
yeah.
really horrible to use. And James was in tech, and all, ever since I knew him, he'd always been in tech, and he was a self-starter. And he said to me, "You've got a really analytical brain, you know." He said, "Why don't you give it a go?" And I was just lucky enough to have, he was working for an employer who was a bit mad anyway, which I think you had to be back in that sort of era. This is the late 80s, early 90s. It was a bit Wild West in the computer industry then. Um, and they said, "We'll give you a go. We'll give you a trial." So I took that leap of faith, and that was that basically. And I've been in tech ever since. So it's always been technology, if you like, that's then paid for the horses. And um, I sort of gradually got back into the horses because I had a period of time when obviously you're doing the buying a house and you can't afford anything and whatnot. And I loaned or shared and DIY'd and all of that stuff. Yeah, to get back into it and just potter around. But went back into the dressage. went and bought a 3-year-old stallion, as you do.
I was going to say, as you do.
Yeah. Went and bought a 3-year-old stallion who was only 15.1 and wasn't going to grow anymore, eventing bred, but had some dressage bloodlines. And I backed him and he got me back into the dressage again. So yeah, that's, but tech wise, I think I would always be in tech because it changes all the time. So if
Yeah,
you like learning new things, it's great because you have to keep up to date with everything,
yeah,
and it's a challenge. And as you get older, obviously it's a challenge, but it really exercises your brain. And I relish that. Sometimes I moan about it, but I relish that challenge of learning something new. And so I enjoy it because
mm,
it's different every day.
yeah,
And I mean, I obviously learnt to program. I'm not like James, who's immensely talented programming wise. But my specialism was more on the data side, so databases, large databases, and then analysing data from the customer's point of view and trying to work out how it all fitted together and how it could be efficient. I'm using obviously simplistic language, so apologies to those folk that are technology people. Um, but that was what got me up in the morning.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
was that constant change, constant challenge, really helping people to achieve what they wanted to achieve from a tech point of view.
yeah,
And that obviously then, as the years passed, stood us in good stead when we came up with the idea of TestPro,
yeah.
which is our baby, really. TestPro is, that's how we class it. Well, I think in terms of lifespan, it's probably a teenager now. I mean, not in, in the number of years we've been going, but in terms of its evolution, it's sort of an upper teenager.
Yeah.
It's fairly mature, actually. It's definitely a girl in that respect. It's fairly mature. It's not a boy. Yeah, is how I look at Test Pro. Um, yeah, and Test Pro just came about because of the dressage and because of the tech,
Yeah,
and that is as simple as it gets. And the simple answer, it is that melding of two passions coming together and then saying, hang on a minute, what do dressage riders use in terms of tech to help them learn their
mm,
tests? And we went, they don't use
nothing.
anything.
Yeah,
No. In the States, there was one app only that was a magazine style app, in terms of, if you think of the test sheets,
yeah,
it was the
yeah,
test sheets broken down into like the judges have with the sort of little figures on them,
yeah,
but like a magazine, so you
yeah,
scrolled through it. So that only suits certain learning styles. It doesn't suit all learning styles to use that as a sort of aid memoir to learn your test.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so we business cased it. We looked at the market. We did all of that good stuff, and I think that's really important to look at your market, look at how much you're going to charge, whether you're going to make any money, because there's no point doing it, folks, if you're not going to make any money, because then you'll be around for a couple of years and then you'll disappear off the face of the earth because you can't afford to keep your app going.
Yeah.
Um, you know, um, yeah, so that's how Test Pro was born, our baby.
Yay. Te-
Yeah.
For anyone that hasn't heard of it, because
Mm.
I think this podcast is listened to in about 44 countries, so there might be some country that hasn't quite got hold of Test Pro yet. But tell us about it. What does it do? You mentioned
Mhm.
that the older US app was
Mm.
just basically the test sheets broken down a little bit, but yours is a million times different than that, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah, yeah. So Test Pro, in a nutshell, we try to mimic people's different learning styles within an app. So Test Pro comes in different flavors. By that, I mean it has different dressage tests in it because there's all sorts of copyright reasons. So, for example, if you're in the UK, there's the British Dressage version, and then there's the British Eventing version, and there's a Pony Club version. And then in the US, we have the contract there now, and that's a US Dressage Federation version, and there's a US eventing version. And we also have FEI as well. So that's the sort of baseline sort of start is what dressage test you're after. You go to the App Store and then you download the app. And within the app, what you'll find is you'll find text, so you'll find a PDF with a dressage test and the words, and then you'll also find an arena, and that is the main thing about it is you'll see that there is an arena in front of you, and you can tap on that arena. So you can tap to make it jump forward, basically, and scroll and go back, or you can actually physically put your finger on that arena and draw. And then Test Pro will follow you around the arena, or depending on what settings you've got on. So, for example, you can have it show the next movement so that you can see ahead of where you're going, or you can switch all of that off once you think you know the test, and you can have it in competition mode so you get no help, basically. But we've also got audio, so you can listen to it. Now, the first iteration of our audio was just literally listening to it, stop and start, and you could adjust the audio a little bit so that you could ride with it and have it speaking to you. And then we developed Caller, which is where it responds to certain commands. So, for example, next, back, pause,
Oh,
or
great.
repeat. And
Yeah.
of course, you just put in, if you want to ride with it, then you just put in your ear pods, whatever you're using. And you put the phone in your pocket. You decide which test you're doing,
Yeah.
put your phone in your pocket, and then you say start, and off you go. With the Apple version, because the Bluetooth is so good on Apple, you can put the phone on the side in your arena and
Oh, yeah.
still Bluetooth to
Yeah.
your ears. With the Android, I find it's not. We've just literally just released the Android version. I find for whatever reason, I don't know whether it's the ear devices I'm using, but they don't seem to reach as far in the arena. So I ride with it in my pocket, and then just call it out. So I think that just about covers everybody because we have so many different ways in which you can learn your test.
Yeah.
We've added other features. So, for example, there is high score, so you can enter your results in. So, and then it gives you some graphs to tell you, say, for example, the difference between left and right rein, or the difference between your paces, where you're scoring highest on your paces. Yeah, so I mean, there's quite a few features in there, and I mean, yeah, some folk you're saying about how many countries because of the FEI version, and also because of the BD version, because the BD tests are used in places like Hong Kong and Singapore. Um, Test Pro's used quite a lot around the world. I mean, our biggest sellers are in the UK and the US, but Canada, Australia, and in Europe as well. Even though we don't have, for example, we don't have the German tests or the Dutch tests. That's what we want to do. But yeah, it is used all around the world now, which is exciting.
Yeah. Very, very exciting. And you have very generously said that listeners can have a year's subscription,
Yes, yes,
which is just
absolutely.
amazing.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, so if you want to do a little, I don't know how you normally do it, but a little shout out and yeah, who we pick a winner. And there might be some more goodies come your way to the winning person. That would be fabulous. But don't forget, so the US, most of our versions now, in fact, except for the FEI versions, are free to download and you get credits anyway, folks. So you can still go down and download and use it initially for free and see whether you get on with it, and explore some of the different features we have in Test Pro, because we always felt that we don't want you to sign up and, unless you're committed. Do you know what I mean? We
Yeah.
prefer to have long-term users, and we have got, plenty of those out there, because it's about the value. We feel Test Pro is very valuable to riders, and very useful. So yeah, that's why it's initially free to download and for you to have a little play with, and use. So yeah.
Super. So I think if people email me, my email is
Yes.
always in the description box, and I will put the names into a virtual hat, and, and then we'll get it sorted. We'll get it
Yes.
sorted that year's free subscription. So that's wonderful. You've also got para tests on there as well, haven't you? I
Yes.
think. Yeah.
Yes, we have. Yes. So if you're a UK person, then we have the BD app contains the bronze level tests for paras, which is all of their intro sort of level, their starter ones for all grades. And those are actually permanently free for para riders anyway. And then, yes, there's an FEI para dressage version as well, for those that are doing the international tests. Yeah.
Because you are very much involved not only with British dressage but also with paras as well, aren't you?
Yes. Yes. So my para journey started because of my mom. Because although she wasn't horsey at the start of my journey, she became horsey in sort of later life, when I got to, I don't know, it must have been about late teens, early 20s, she was diagnosed with MS. And she was sort of looking at ways in which she also was a dancer. She was very into ballet dancing. I was not. I think that was. I think to be fair, dressage is probably the next best thing, really. So that was a disappointment, I think, for her, that I wasn't a ballet dancer. And yeah, but she wanted something to do, and so she went to an RDA centre. So her para dressage journey started at RDA, and then mine started in that way because I then helped her. Um, we sourced a horse for her. This was then, like 5 years later, sourced a horse for her. Her disability then, obviously with MS, it's gradual decline. These days, there's so many drugs, it's sort of stabilizes, but hers was the sort of relapsing remitting. So we started on a paradressage journey together. I was her trainer and then became her trainer and rider, because she became someone that was able to have a rider. So those that are grades 1 to 3 end up having a support rider. And then I was asked, the next step was that BD Wales had a vacancy for a para rep. And so I became the para rep for BD Wales. And then after that, the director role came up. And by this time, we'd done internationals in the UK together. I'd also taught a number of other para riders. or schooled their horses here at home. This is in between all the tech as well. So I'd become really committed to the paras and had a lot of knowledge from a rider, trainer, coach perspective, and also admin, from that side. And the para director role came up, and I thought, oh, I fulfill all the criteria. I don't know how much time I need to spend doing this director role. And I spoke to the then para director, who was Julie Frizzell, and spoke to her about it. And she told me more info, and then went for all the interviews and stuff, did all of that. And then Julie got elected because the members have to vote for you. There was somebody else that was also up for para director. And that started my para director role for BD. And whatever they say, it's more time than you expect.
Yeah. That's probably because
Um,
you're quite conscientious as well. It's
you
probably
just,
a meticulous nature.
yes, the analytical part of me. And you obviously, you do a BD, you do a director manifesto about the things you'd like to change and stuff. So I had quite a few things on my to-do list. And the role evolves, doesn't it? Anyway, because of your style and, as you say, your analytical brain. And also, I was bringing to the board the para role, but also I'm I've been in a dressage fanatic for so long. I've seen the sport evolve. I've been a rider. I've trained. I'm in touch with obviously a lot of riders in my local area. So you forget, but you bring this whole wealth of experience with you when you do a board role like that. And obviously, I have the tech. So I have the tech, I have the business bit. I've worked in lots of large companies. So I felt I had the para role, but also I had other stuff to offer BD.
Yeah.
Uh, a broad spectrum, because you do need to bring those skills as well, because we do scrutinize accounts,
Yeah.
for any BD members out there, we do look at the accounts. Some of us look in more depth than others because it may not be something we're interested. We do look at marketing strategies, or, what are we going to do? How are we going to balance the books?
Yeah.
What should we use money for? What about obviously the judge director and the training directors look at the training that needs to be out there for stewards, for judges, for coaches. It's not just one thing. It's not just about going to competitions. There's a whole structure, and the para dressage part mirrors the non-disabled bit. So we have para judges, para coaches, para stewards, all on a pathway because there's different rules for para riders. So everybody needs to be familiar with them. We launched Tash, who's in the office. One thing that I came in, she was on maternity at this time. When I came in as director, I always felt that riders, para riders that were at sort of silver level, that were going into gold, that maybe wanted to dip their toe into being an international rider, didn't have the support they needed and weren't catered for at regional level. So, and Tash had, before she went on to maternity leave, she'd done a whole lot of stuff on a para academy. So once she came back and I was sort of got my feet under the table a bit, we launched the Para Academy. That was a big innovation we done, and we have an application process every year, and the number of applications we get now, the first year, yes, we filled it. Now, second year, it was like, oh my God, there's so many people have applied.
Yeah.
It's very competitive to get onto that academy. So if you don't get on, folks, do apply again, because it may be that next time round you will get on. It's super competitive to get on that now. Yeah. So, and then this last year, so 2025, just before in 2024, Joyce, head who was our chief selector, had come to the end of her term. And we talked at the board level about the fact that the international selection for seniors, juniors, young riders, ponies, there is a director for that and who's accountable to the board, but there it isn't mimicked for paras. The chief selector wasn't a board member, but with me, they felt we could do both roles. So I became chief selector because I'm also the director, and I have two amazing other para selectors with me, Pam and Isla. And they bring huge selector experience, and they'd been doing the paras for a couple of years anyway with Joyce. And I'd been understudying Joyce for my term. I'd been with her for a lot of the events and everything. So it was a natural progression to incorporate Chief Selector, which adds another layer of stuff, though, to to-do list.
You're
You
definitely a
know,
busy person.
yeah. My time management skills have to be top notch, and
Yeah.
my diary management, the James now says to me, okay, have you blocked out all the dates for when you're doing para stuff and board stuff in our 2026 diary yet? And
Wow.
I'm like, no, not yet. There's some stuff. And he said, so when are the weeks that we can go on holiday? you know, that's what happens is when are the weeks that we can go on holiday, so that we can sort of juggle things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and get some downtime as well, get some
Yes.
relaxation time in.
Yes.
Um, where do you think technology is going for equestrians? Where do you think we're heading?
So this is an interesting one because when we first started the TestPro journey, which it was 2000 and I want to say 16, we started on the journey, and then I think the BD one was released in 2017. Um, there wasn't much in the way of apps, for example, out there for riders, and there also wasn't much in the way of technology. So I'm thinking here, like wearables for
Mm,
horse or rider. So
yeah,
think
yeah.
about your Apple Watch, your Garmin watch, and those sorts of things. Then there's been on the app front, I think there's been quite a boom as people have gone, oh, I'm an equestrian person. I've had a great idea for an app, and I do get those mails. And I do try and help people as much as possible with them. And I've seen lots of people that have been, working away at stuff, you know. Um, and that is a really good thing that we have more options, whether it be diary management, help with your stable management, like, managing your farrier and your worming and your
Yeah.
routine sort of stuff. And then we've had wearables like horse monitor things, that go on the horses to monitor their heart or whatever. And I've seen Garmin have launched one that attaches to the tail, which is I'm dying to sort of see what that's like. Um, yeah, so I think the market is going to stabilize. So from an app perspective, it's going to stabilize. So some of those are going to disappear
Yeah.
inevitably
Yeah.
because there isn't a lot of money in the horsey industry if you're niche, because we're
Mm,
quite niche. Um, if you're football or rugby or cricket or golf,
yeah.
there is a lot of people out there, both male and female, doing those sports. In horses, we're still quite niche,
Yeah.
so you have to have a lot of investment behind you and knowledge to launch anything. So hence why you find a common complaint out there is, why does X cost so much? Because the market isn't big enough, folks.
Yeah.
That's the simple thing, you know. So, for example, a question I might get asked is, why isn't your app free permanently? You have
Yeah.
no idea of the amount of lines of code in the app. It is not, I can't go on somewhere and push a button and it spews out our app.
Yeah. Yeah.
It has actual lines of code that have to be hand coded. I cannot use Chat GPT to produce my app. Okay. Just spoiler alert there. You cannot do test pro using Chat GPT. Yes, we do occasionally use AI to help us overcome a problem, but you can't use it to produce it.
Yeah.
It's not good enough. So the market is an issue for people. And that the price points are an issue. We don't want to put advertising in the app, so hence we have to charge for it. So again, in tech, this is the direction I see. You will have to pay for apps. You will have to pay for other tech. You might have to pay for more than you want to pay, but that's because of the market sizing. But AI will be used more, but don't think it's a panacea for everything. Okay. It will not replace a dressage judge. I can categorically say that now. We are a long way off that, folks. A long, long way off that. Think of AI as being a very, very large sort of, I think in brain wise, it's probably about a 6 or 7 year old, a very, very large database that is using probability to pull
Yeah.
out answers, okay, and pull out the most, the highest probable best guess
Yeah.
answer
Yeah.
from all the information it's got out there. Okay. So hence why it gets things wrong, or hence why it's only as good as the data that's fed into it in the first place. So if the data's rubbish,
Yeah.
or it's the current mood or the current vibe out there, then what you're going to get is the current vibe, the current thoughts, or fashion, for want of a better word. So AI is not going to fix everything. Um, we will all be using a bit of it, but it's not going to fix all your problems. I think from general point of view, equestrians will be served better by tech. We're going to have more horse monitoring, I think. I think also from a sort of care and welfare point of view, that's a really good thing.
Mm, mm.
I can see sort of, because we have to to be held accountable. I think there's going to be more useful stuff that comes out for sort of welfare of horses, and I think that's really positive. App wise, who knows? I mean, obviously, we're doing more for, like, whilst you're on a horse, whilst you're off horse as well. We're going to be doing more to keep you learning stuff. And I don't mean just dressage test learning in terms of your actual, like, your knowledge base. We're going to do more in that space. Yeah, so lots of excitement, I think, in the future. I
Yeah.
can see a lot going on.
Yeah. Yeah. This will definitely keep you even more busy.
Yes, it will. It will.
Well, thank you so much. Where can we find you online and on socials?
You can find us Facebook and Instagram. We're under Dressage Space Test Pro, all one word,
Yeah.
and we're also on Threads. I'm on LinkedIn. If people want to contact me as a sort of like on a business level, you'll find me obviously as Tracy Ormrod. I can't remember whether I'm Tracy or Tracy-Anne on there, so you'll have to look for both. And then we're on all the W's for the website, .dressagetestpro.com. I think that covers everything. Oh, yes, we have a TikTok as well. Again, that's Dressage Test Pro. You
Oh.
know, yeah, I, I'm sorry, folks, I'm not very good on TikTok. I only post the funny little videos every now and again from, general life on there. Um, yeah, and email, you can email from within the app. So you'll find that on Apple, the Apple app, in the I menu at the bottom, that's on there. You can message us, and within the Android, in the links menu, that's the same across all of the flavors of the app as well for you. Yeah, so I think.
Super.
Hmm?
Thank you so much. That has been fascinating to hear about your horsey journey and also your tech journey. That has been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.